Marvelous, 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 I'm raving. And when she puckers up her lips so sweet, she's got the brand of kisses can be beat. Marvelous, marvelous, boys all love her so. They're out of luck, you see, she's mine exclusively, sweet, sweet, marvelous girl.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. Welcome to the Lynn Show, as it's been called, edition number 4. And we're going to have a great night tonight, titled Jews Who Choose. Okay, we got amazing guests, very charming, phenomenal people joining us tonight. And we're going to do it all together with, as I always like to promote, a nice Israeli wine. So tonight we're doing a Vitkin Pinot Noir. Vitkin is an amazing winery just north of just south of Caesarea and north of Netanya on the Mediterranean coast. They don't do Cabernet, they don't do Chardonnay, they don't do Merlot. They do all other types of grapes. Really, just getting everything out of the land of Israel. So looking forward to a great night together. L'chaim, Baruch atah Adonai l'melech borei peri hagofen. Now, tonight is going to be a show kind of about Ruth. Okay, what Ruth are we talking about? Let's see. Over here, we have for you. Tonight's a night about Ruth. Why are we talking about Ruth? Okay, yeah, that's me and Dr. Ruth. I'm not a patient. I'm a panelist, clearly, in that. The famous Dr. Ruth. Babe Ruth, of course, you know, okay, not first name, whatever it is. Babe Ruth, not that Ruth. There I am, helping him out, you know, making sure he's got the right bat and all the things he needs there. Baby Ruth, of course, these are really funny. I haven't seen these before. The Baby Ruth candy bar, which, by the way, is an argument of historians whether it's named after Baby Ruth, which was the daughter of President Grover Cleveland, or whether it, because their offices, I think, were down from Wrigley Field, whether they really had Babe Ruth in mind. They just had to trademark it and put the Y at the end, okay? But tonight's show is not about that Ruth either, okay? Yeah, there I am, right? Oh, look at that. Grover Cleveland, Baby Ruth, and yes, I was his muse, you know, in a past life. Okay, can you find the Rabbi Lynn in the bow tie? Oh boy, yes, of course, one of the most popular Ruths today, RBG as she's called, and yeah, there we are together, you know, talking about the greatness of the name Ruth and what it means to her. I happen to be married to a Ruth, and there she is, right there. Okay, it's really good. You guys are really good. But tonight's story is about, I think that's a real one, about Ruth the Moabite and the connection to the festival, which is starting tomorrow night, called Shavuot. And on the festival Shavuot, we customarily will read the book of Ruth. And the question is, of course, why? And that's what tonight's show is about. And at the end, when I give the Dvar Torah, I'll answer the question. But Ruth is the matriarch of the messianic line. King David comes from her, the Mashiach comes from her, and the story is very apropos for the festival of Shavuot tomorrow night, which commemorates the giving of the Torah. More about that later. Now, Jews Who Choose is a show about people who choose to come into the Jewish people, who go through a conversion process, and there are so many illustrious converts in Jewish history, Ruth obviously being the mother of the Messiah of the Messianic line, and so many more. And the story about that tonight, we're going to just do, you know, in real time with real people who have made that journey. There's a whole laundry list, but I have to promote one of my favorite, you know, being a musician myself and being an old timer, the Rat Pack are you know, some of the most fondest memories and sounds that I can conjure up. Okay, and of course the great Jew of the Rat Pack, as we know, is our dear friend who converted. I'll tell you the story of Sammy Davis Jr. Okay. And of course, one of his most favorite tunes, deep and enriching, a beautiful story, and so well sung by him, Mr. Bojangles.
That was Mr. Bojangles. Mr. Bojangles. Mr. Bojangles. Lord, he could dance. Told me of the times he worked with minstrel shows.
Yeah, now Sammy Davis Jr. really converted. He was all around Jews his whole life. We have a clip of him, I think, at the Chabad telethon talking about his bar mitzvah. Okay, let's hear it.
It is important to not only believe in something, but give testimony to that belief. On behalf of my kids, my son Mark, who was bar mitzvahed, he is now 24 years old. In his name, Mark Sidney Davis, I would like to put $1,000 up there.
Okay, $1,000 from Sammy Davis Jr. for Mark, not his bar mitzvah, his son's bar mitzvah. But Sammy Davis Jr. converted. He was around Jews his whole life, and he felt very, very moved by the religion and the cause. And his friend Eddie Cantor, you don't know who Eddie Cantor is, born Izzy Itzkowitz in the Lower East Side, of course, became the famous songwriter, and Eddie Cantor was a good friend and gave him a mezuzah. You ever see people wear a mezuzah around their neck? So Sammy Davis, I think, invented that. He gave him a little tiny mezuzah, and Sammy put it around his neck, and he wore it. And the one night he didn't wear it, he got in a terrible car accident, lost his eye, and really, really bad car accident. He figured that was it, and he converted, and he married, oh my gosh, what was her name? Yeah, she was a Swedish actress model, May Britt. She converted also before the wedding. Okay, so I got to give a shout out to Sammy Davis Jr. And we'll end the show at the end with one of his great tunes. So you got to stick around for that. But first, let's talk about people we don't know. Sammy left this world 30 years ago, something like that. Let's talk about great people that we have in our community. And I want to bring on a dear friend. Awesome, fantastic to have you here, Troy Valberg. Welcome. There you are.
How we doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great, Troy. How are you?
Baruch Hashem.
Okay, good. So I think you're in a boat there or something. Like, okay, thank you for coming into the show, Jews Who Choose. And you and I have spent time together. We've traveled together, and we've studied together, and we've done a lot together. And I can say that you haven't done your job because my back still hurts. But my wife is going to call you after the show and make sure that okay? But you inspire me nonetheless in the other areas. If you can't inspire me to stay in the gym, you inspire me because your story is amazing. So let's just jump right in, Troy, and let's get a little bit. Give me the really quick version, where you're from, and like how this thing started. Okay, your story. Everyone's story is very unique. Of course, yours is yours. Let's go for it. Let's hear you out.
I'll keep it quick.
To the point. Go.
All right. I grew up in Amsterdam, New York, small town with very little Jews. My dad is Jewish. He's Ashkenazi. He was born to immigrants from Poland and Lithuania. But like many Jews in that era, in a small town filled with Polish and Italian Catholics, it wasn't fun to be Jewish. So after bar mitzvah age, he pretty much, stepped aside and didn't want much to do with it. He met my mom, who came from the Dominican Republic, who actually ironically grew up in a Seventh-day Adventist boarding school. He didn't tell her he was Jewish till after they got married. And she was like, I don't get it. Like, is that a big deal? What does that even mean?
Right.
And then me and my brother were raised by my mom in churches because he didn't care. He just said no Catholic churches. But so we grew up going to church. And like anybody else, at 13, I pretty much stopped going. And
right. And people should know that not, Seventh-day Adventist is a certain brand of Christianity that actually keeps Shabbat the way they understand it, but it's the focus of the seventh day, therefore seventh day. So you did like everybody else. Your family keeps Shabbat, you run away.
Exactly. Well, the truth is, my mom, I didn't grow up remembering that because
Right.
when I was old enough, she decided to switch to a Pentecostal church. This is like the real Southern Bible thumping, like
Right.
women in skirts and hairs and buns, real, not evangelicals, but
Very religious. Yeah.
it was called
Puritan,
Pilgrim
right.
Holiness.
Right.
So, but after like 12 or 13, or pretty much, when my parents split up, my dad wasn't going to force us to go to church. So later on in life, when I was 24, I moved to New York City. I moved in with my brother who had been here for a few years already. And I knew that he was getting interested in Judaism, but I didn't know to what extent. And my first time at his house, he was living in Flatbush, is
Wow.
my first exposure to like
ground zero. Yeah.
Jews. I'd never seen anything like this. I had no idea what they were doing. Why does everybody dress the same? Why are there no bars and clubs over here?
Right. And you're a guy who's at this point not connected to being Jewish at all. You played football, you're in physical fitness, working at Equinox, right? Like,
yeah, to give
right.
you I mean,
you're a regimented guy, and your brother goes off and does something insane like this, trying to figure out his roots.
Exactly. I had no idea what he was doing, and I also had very little interest. My Jewish exposure growing up was, a couple elderly cousins. One of them named Ruth, actually.
Okay, good for the show.
Yeah, and then
yeah, that's a great pick. Love it.
I'll explain that in a sec. But so essentially, I went to a synagogue twice my whole life. Once was for a funeral, once was for something else, and then when I got to New York and I started meeting Jewish people for the first time, like I never really knew anybody Jewish except my dad and some family members and grandparents who long passed away. And all these people in New York were so proud of being Jewish. They were like singing it from the mountaintops. You walk around Equinox where I used to work. They were like so proud of it. I never met anybody like this. So then I got convinced by my brother, who was 2 months away from finishing a conversion process. I had no idea. He was fully Orthodox at this point in time. And then all the people from the gym, they told me to go on Birthright. That really started to spark events, a series of events. And when I came back, basically from 2012 through 2015, I just did a bunch of like Israel trips with JEC and different
JEC, look at the top right of your screen. JEC plug for More Manhattan. JEC. Troy was there before I was there.
There you go. So a bunch of different trips and more Shabbat dinners and more trips and more classes. And then finally in 2015, beautiful. I signed up for the conversion process. Finished in 2016. That was that photo of me with all the rabbis outside the mikveh.
Great.
And then I kept going and growing. That other picture you just saw was me when I spent a month in yeshiva.
Now let me ask you, like you're in physical fitness. You're a guy who understands regimen. You're a guy who understands the body and the possibilities of the body. And then yet you're a guy who now has taken what I think, and I've known you a long time, I'm surprising you with this, but like taking that same focus on how to make your outsides fit and healthy and sustainable and leverage it, and then you turn that internally and you run with that, with the soul, with the spiritual side of it. So that's what I see in you. That's what
beautifully put. Definitely, there's a carryover with discipline, like
sure,
that you need to have in this religion.
What would you say? Like, I want to just two quick questions for them. We're going to bring in another guy to jump on with you, but what would you say is what really drove you? Like, what was the thing that, it's one thing like you like Jews, whatever, Equinox, you get Jewish clients and I don't know, but maybe they'll take you better or worse. You can tell me later. But like, what drove you really to go the distance, to come into the Jewish people and make that your identity?
Two things. The miraculous nature of Jewish history. It just, you couldn't argue with it. It was just too wondrous, and you wanted to dive deeper and like figure it out. What happened to these people? How did this happen? How are we still here? And secondly, I felt like I knew everything I needed to know about one half of me. I can, dance merengue and speak Spanish, but I didn't know anything about.
Wait, hold on. Stop the show. You can dance what?
Dance merengue and speak Spanish.
Go on then. Let's go. Come on.
But I didn't know anything about Judaism at all, or Jewish anything. So I felt like I owe it to my grandparents and just one whole half of me to know where that comes from. And the more you dive deep, the deeper you dive, like I said to you the other night, if you're intellectually honest and open with yourself and you allow that to penetrate you, you'll find yourself in Minion with a bunch of old guys at 7 a.m.
And they're not going to Equinox. They got Eicher, Kichel, and Herring to get through. They don't have time for their plank.
Exactly. Before you know, you're eating Grieven with a bunch of Hasidim.
Yeah. Okay, listen, I'm bringing in a good friend, okay, of yours, of mine, someone that you've traveled with also that you know well. You guys are unbelievable. Let's introduce Colby Forster here. Yaakov, known as Yaakov Colby Forster. Look at you.
Oh, wow.
Live from North Carolina, okay? You got a guy from Philly, you got New York, got North Carolina represented. Hi, Yaakov. How you doing?
And the first time I met Troy, he wasn't even there. He let me stay at his house. They didn't even know me. Me and two other guys.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if people know this, but like, we don't plan these things. Like, the Almighty put this drive in both of you to like come to the Jewish people and join us. And like, and I know both of you and I'm so inspired by the two of you and it's amazing. Really, you're both amazing, but you definitely do wonders for the gene pool. I mean, you guys are the two of the best fit guys. I've hiked with both of you. You guys, like, okay, my back's killing me. Like it's great. But let me ask you this, like we're going to get into a little bit later in the show of why we talk about Ruth, but I just want to put this question to both of you. And then Troy, we're going to move over to Yaakov and hear a little bit of his story. But put this question to both of you, there's no mitzvah on Shavuot. We don't do it. There's no shofar. There's no matzah. There's no anything. There's the day of the giving of the Torah. And the way we tap into it and commemorate it is with the story of Ruth, who converted to Judaism. She was a Moabite princess, and she chose to be a pauper as a Jew, literally a woman begging in the fields, and could have gone back to the silver spoon, the palace, and everything, and she chose. And that's how Jews for thousands of years have been appreciating and understanding the most seminal moment of our entire identity and calendar. How does that make you feel? Like, is there a certain pride in that for you? Do you have a unique perspective that you've done the journey yourself? And here it is that the entire Jewish people on a pedestal puts the mother of King David, or not the mother directly, but the progenitor of King David and the Messiah, everything. How is that, Troy? We'll start with you. Just how does that give you a certain very special feeling and place in the Jewish people?
Absolutely. I think that it brings to light two vital facts of being Jewish, that it's something that you have to choose all the time, every day, that you're going to keep doing this. And then B, all of Judaism is a story of finding it and getting closer and growing and going down a path.
Amazing. You have to choose all the time. That's really great. Listen, that's so everyone's trying to wake us up here on the eve of Shavuot, telling you this is, the story of the giving of the Torah is coming. And like, it's not just some memorial, like this thing happened 3,332 years ago. We're trying to inspire ourselves, all the Jewish nation, even today in 2020, to choose again. And that's that message you said is like, it's got to resonate. Everyone out there, you got to hear that, like the power of choosing again and confirming that choice. And Troy, you do that day in and day out. Everywhere you go, you're inspiration for all of us. And I thank you for jumping on here and sharing with us. Okay, I wish we had more time to schmooze, but like really love you tons. And I'm inspired by you and really appreciate you joining us tonight.
Same, Rabbi. I love you too. Thank you.
Okay, babe. Thank you. Okay, Yaakov, come on. Before I tell your story, give me that answer. What do you think? Shavuot coming in, like the whole Jewish people are sitting there saying, yep, the people who choose to come in, they are heroes. Ruth is the ultimate expression of that, and this is the big message.
I think it's spot on. I wrote this one quote in my journal back in the day. I said, if it's okay if I'm not one of the greats, but when the greats get together, I want them to at least know who I am. You kind of feel like that with the Jewish people, where I think there's probably a mission that you know better than I, but it's better to be on the tails of lions than on the heads of foxes. And being able to like associate with such a people that have done such amazing things on a macro and a micro level, from the greatest of the greats to the individual guy and his family, individual girl and her family throughout the millennia. I think it just speaks volume to the character of the Jewish people, and whether people choose to be a part of that community and that people as a Jew or as a non-Jew. It's I think it's important to realize, that there is a creator and that we all have our individual missions in life. Judaism definitely provides I would say a lot more infrastructure to pursue some of those things, but I think as non-Jews we have to trust our sages that spiritual fulfillment can be reached anywhere we see in life, and some of us just choose to maybe make a little more infrastructure around that.
Right. Okay. Now okay. Thank you for that answer. A little more infrastructure. I would say a lot more infrastructure, Colby. Okay. Let's face it. Okay. But your story everyone's story is unique, but your story is very unique, right? That you were a handsome guy growing up in North Carolina. Tell me about your parents and your upbringing. You were raised a religious Christian.
Yeah.
Right? And you went all the way.
I think this is the first time my hair has been that long, but here we are again, COVID haircuts. Yeah, I grew up in a small town, it wasn't as they would say, probably as a film person, I feel like you would appreciate this, but Dudley Moore, 1972, like Arthur, it's a small place we're talking about here. Like where I grew up, they recently the whole county carpeted. That's
I get the joke. I get it. Nobody watching gets the joke. I don't think. If you get the joke, I don't know, click somewhere. You got the joke. But I got you. I got you, Foster. I got you.
Small town. No, we were so poor we didn't gossip because we couldn't afford to put our 2 cents in. But the good thing about growing up in the South is it's a highly moral place, and I just had the coolest, most amazing parents ever. I mean, kind of as you would see in that picture.
Hard work.
Really blessed me at a really young age. I grew up like on the side of a mountain. Was able to somehow, it was such a gift that Hashem gave me, but maybe 8 or 9 years old, just looked out at the mountains every day and like consciously realized that this wasn't like fake, or it wasn't like, this didn't just happen. Like, so I felt, as I look back through the lenses that I look through now, like very Abrahamic, that I was like, Hashem gave me a gift to be able to look out in the world and recognize there was definitely something bigger than myself, and that, a longing to connect with whatever that was. So
now you became very interested in Christianity and very involved, and went from super like left wing, take care of the world, peacenik kind of. And your parents are amazing. Like you told me when they something like when a hurricane hit, you guys were like, yeah, let's go, boys, everyone up in the van, and let's go and let's help out.
Yeah,
like an amazing sense of responsibility from a religious standpoint for the world, and with that worldview. And then you went from that to a very, very right-wing, God-centric view. Describe that little transition in your previous religion.
Yeah, so about 30 seconds of a 10-year time frame. I grew up with the most incredible parents in the world. Just they're full of chesed. Like when Hurricane Katrina hit, we loaded up in a van, went and built houses for a few weeks. During the 90s, when the Kosovo refugee crisis came up, my family hosted 26 people, fed them, clothed them, housed them.
Amazing.
The whole shebang. Like they're just such incredible people. And I kind of lived a normal middle class life in the South. Did some things like, was I think probably as mischievous as anyone else. But I think my parents instilled a conscience, or at least I felt guilty about some of those things. And then
not just Jewish guilt, other religions have guilt also. Unbelievable.
It happens.
They stole that also. You can't keep anything sacred.
And then as I graduated high school, I wanted to I was longing for something more deep. Like wanted to pursue spirituality. So my only outlet to do that was in Christianity and Protestant Christianity at the time. And so I started out, and they ended up kind of just going all in, and I ended up in a very, we'll call it left of, way left, and, social justice, beautiful of that religion. I moved into a homeless shelter in Miami, lived there, and was just really connected to, let's say, like social justice, homelessness, things like that. And then my spectrum kind of just led me all the way from like central kind of Christianity, like skinny jeans, cool music, church going, type stuff. And then at the end of my journey, I was probably more on the far right, which was very much a disciplined, more regimented religious life, but at the same time was also protesting from abortion clinics. So I kind of went to this whole spectrum of life and took parts from everything that I went through, and just I think
and then how did that translate into finding Judaism? I mean, all this, you know, this real experience that you had in the world and in religion and trying to find God and trying to find that expression. How did that transition then?
Yeah, so the last part, I think the last stop on the road was this messianic Christianity, which is just more messy than onic, and it's essentially
pause, more messy than
onic.
You love it. Okay, continue.
It's like a form of Christianity where I can't articulate it too much, but I think the premise would be like where they're kind of into Jewish things, but maybe they would say they're like informed by the rabbis but not bound by them. For a few months, you know, it's kind of in that world, and I found myself reading Rashi and, you know, doing these things because there's a whole lot of English library out there, and I was just like, you know, and I spend zero time in this other half of the book. And, you know, a friend asked me, well, you know, what if it's not true? And in about 3 seconds, we both figured out that was a very real possibility. And next thing we know, we showed up at a Chabad house. And that's when we kind of
you ask the question. You're looking at the New Testament. You're like, why aren't we looking at the Old Testament? You're reading Rashi, which is one of the most prominent Jewish commentators in the history of Jewish literature. And then you're like, hey, maybe our side of this book isn't really true. And then you're at a Chabad house.
Yeah. Well, you know, a lot of stuff in there, but essentially we realized that any wisdom we were getting wasn't from, you know, any other worldview. The really deep things that we felt that moved us, that made sense, that passed the litmus test of question after question was found in the sages of Israel. And so that's where we just started spending a lot more of our time.
Beautiful. And then you went to Israel. How'd you get to Israel?
So the first time was 2014.
That's in Israel. There's pictures in Israel, I think. Yeah.
And I got really lucky. Me and a friend developed an app, and we entered in a contest with Citibank, and somehow we won the United States little portal of that thing, and they flew us to Israel. And my first time in the Holy Land, Citibank paid for it, so it was a great time. Showed up at a guy's house, and
see those bounce
for
checks
Shabbos.
The Citibank are going to good use.
Yeah, and then it was a beautiful trip to Israel, and I committed to going back. I told myself I wanted to go back every year, and, you know, fast forward a few years, I'm sitting in Israel with you, and
sitting in Israel with me. That's amazing. But I got to tell people, like, how you ended up with us in More Manhattan was, you know, God runs the world. He threw it your way some sort of, what was it, some cheap like $60 round trip ticket to New York, and you just booked it saying, what the heck? If it's a scam, I didn't lose much, and if I can't go, I didn't lose much. It's only $60. You end up flying to New York for a day, and then what? It just popped in. You just came over.
Yeah, I was working. I still work for a company, and I was booking a flight for work. And for some reason, I looked on Google, and I saw a New York flight that was $60 round trip, flying out Tuesday, coming back Wednesday morning. I was like, maybe I can get off. Maybe I'll get my work done early, and I can go to this. And somehow it worked out. And I leave at 4 or 5 o'clock, and an hour later, I'm in New York. And I text my buddy. He's at a Maor Tuesday night Rabbi Jack class, and I've never turned down a free meal. So of course I showed up to that, and next thing you know, me and Rabbi Jack are talking, and that December I board a flight to Israel with you guys, and, you know, really it was super impactful in my life.
That was great. I loved seeing you there. You got such a smile, and you got such a love of life and a love of God and a love of soul and everything. You're an amazing guy, and your story is just beginning. You just got married. Okay.
Got married.
Amazing. Okay. Lucky lady. Like, awesome. And we're like, you and Troy also, Troy is still listening. We're expecting like really big things from you guys. Okay. Like, you know, you're a beacon of light, and you've been there. You've been out there in the world, and you were raised by parents who put the word of God deep into you, and the idea of imitatio Deo, imitating God and giving to the world and doing chesed, kindness, and repairing the world and fixing it. And like, you're a beacon of light, and you're a great friend, and you're a pleasure to have around. And really thank you, Yaakov, for joining. Thank you to your wife for letting you come on tonight. And we love you tons. And I can't wait to give you a hug after this whole crazy thing is over. Okay, we can hang out in person again. Thank you. Keep your smile going. It's great.
I love being here.
Okay.
Thank
Lots of love. Thank you, Yako. Beautiful, amazing people, amazing stories, amazing journey. There's so many of them out there, and they're really inspiring. And I encourage all of you watching this, when you can, and we can hang out back in New York again together at More Manhattan JEC. We're going to hang out with those two guys, and they'll regale you with the details of all their stories. We have a question we always like to take from the community. We have Jacob here, going to come on with me. Hey, Jacob, how you doing? I think, Jacob, you're muted. You're muted. Unmute yourself. There you go.
Right. Yeah.
Much better.
Modern problems.
Okay. Jacob, thanks for coming on, and I'm happy to field your question. Let me have it.
Yes. I mean, first of all, thank you very much, Rave, for hosting this. It is a pleasure to see you and hear your words of wisdom. So one question I have from all this Shavuot, being given the Torah, having the beautiful story of Ruth converting to Judaism. I mean, I've always heard about Judaism being the less conflictive, the most laid-back religion out there. Never have, pushed its ideology into anyone. Never has, never will. Comparing with almost any other ideology in humanity. So why do as we as the people of Israel reject people from kind of like we push people back as much as like 3 times before they even consider them as joining the Jewish people?
Okay, that's a great question. So you made 2 comments, and they both go together, and it's really important. We don't actually we don't missionize the rest of the world. Now, people will tell you we missionize ourselves. The reason why I'm a rabbi is I'm running around trying to get Jews to get like more into it. Okay, but you're right. We don't have a wing of converting people. Not only, and you're right. Not only do we not have a department to convert others to Judaism, but you're right. There's such a custom that when a person comes and says, "I want to convert," we push them away 3 times. And that's a fascinating thing and it's important to undo the misconceptions surrounding that, because it can be perceived. Here we are putting people who convert on a pedestal. The most fascinating part of the whole holiday is the story of Ruth, and so many greats in our illustrious history. And a convert comes in, and the Torah says so many times that you should never look at a convert differently. Just the opposite. You are also foreigners in Egypt, and because you know that experience so well, you should be able to be the first ones to appreciate that a person who comes into Judaism is on not just equal status, but like should be revered for the choices that they've made. So why is it that we push people away? So the answer is that the most people come to Judaism. There are 2 things, 2 sides of the same coin. Most people come to Judaism with a non-Jewish philosophical outlook. In other religions out there, you're either on the winning team, or you like burn in hell forever, or you're an infidel forever, or you're something. If you're not on the winning team, you're finished in spiritual terms. And that's not Judaism. Judaism actually teaches, the world according to Judaism teaches, that non-Jews and Jews alike have access to the world to come, connection to God, will be rewarded for their good deeds, will have to pay the price or deal with our bad deeds and our mistakes in life. Jews and non-Jews are not, it's not better or worse. A non-Jew can be a non-Jew and have the same world to come, heavenly offerings, etc., connection with God. There are different operating systems of the soul and how they function in a spiritual realm within the body. That's a deeper conversation, not for now. But the operating systems are not ranked that one's better and one gets the pearly gates, the other one goes to roast and toast forever in hellfire and damnation. It's not true. We push people away on the one hand because we need to explain to them in court. If you believe in Judaism says you don't have to be a Jew. You don't have to be a Jew. God loves everybody, and everybody can win if they deserve to win, and everyone will get the same, hand dealt to them, so to speak, when they fall short. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing, of course, we have to evaluate the person's commitment, because it's not easy. Being a Jew is not easy. It might seem very great, it's whatever, but like our history has shown that there needs to be a certain tenacity, a certain understanding. So we have a custom to push people away because generally they're coming in with not having the right perspective per se, and when they do, of course, then we can expedite that process. But there's a custom, That's the idea. But the most important thing is that Jewish philosophy says that a non-Jew has the same position and rights and opportunity and spiritual growth and everything a Jew. They're different nations. We have a certain job and a certain infrastructure, and the non-Jewish nations also have what they should eat and what they shouldn't eat, and laws of morality and all these things according to Jewish philosophy. So that's the answer. And thank you for your question, Jacob. It's a great question, very important question. I'm glad we got a chance to deal with it. Thank you for coming on the show. Okay, very important stuff. And of course, the conversation about what conversion is and what it isn't, what the process is really very important to understand. Really important. Now's not the time, of course, on a show, but it's really important to understand. However, we have a special guest and a surprise guest, and she is someone that I had the great privilege of knowing way back when, back when in her very young years at the University of Pennsylvania, where I was a rabbi there. And we have not only stayed friends and stayed close, but in the iteration of More Manhattan JEC that really put us on the map, she came on board and she was our COO for over 2 years. And she is an amazing person, and we asked her to come on and share a little bit of her insights with us. Okay, Annette, you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Hi.
Hi.
Annette Raj de la Torre. Erwin's not coming. We're not going to get Erwin. Tell him
He's on a conference call.
He's on a conference call.
Sorry.
Okay, Annette, you're unbelievable. And we've known each other like how long now? Has it been like 14 years, something like that? Something like that.
Like 4 months. Not
14 years and 4. Oh, sorry about that. Right? And you're raising 3 kids and New York City life, and you married a guy named Erwin. Okay. And you've been through this whole process. And yes, you reminded me on the chat that you were also rejected a few times at the beginning when you came calling. And okay, that's the way. But I proves the point, because your perseverance and tenacity is amazing. And so I just, we spoke to Troy and Colby and how they came into it, but now you're a mommy, and you got 3 beautiful kids, and married to a great guy named Erwin. I love that. Like he's one of my favorite guys in New York City. Yes. Right. And, and so and your Hebrew name is Ruth. And so how could we not have beautiful picture? How could we not have you on the eve of the story of Ruth? And you chose that name. You chose that name because of this story. So now that you're like years on the other side of the actual conversion, let's call it, and raising Jewish children in a Jewish family and married and everything, I want to hear like your, tell it to us, like how you see it and the choices you made, and connect it to Ruth, our matriarch.
Yeah. So raising Jewish kids is just as tough as raising non-Jewish kids, I imagine. But, I have to say my oldest is 5. I have a daughter who's almost 4, and I have a 2-year-old, a boy, a girl, and a boy. And it's really funny, every night I say Shema with them. And today, for example, like I'm putting my son Asher to bed, and we're saying Shema, and we always just say the first couple of lines. And I was like, oh, he's too little. He's not ready for the rest. And he just starts saying the rest of Shema. And I'm like, it makes me so happy to think that Judaism is continuing. Well, half of my family was Jewish, but it totally died. But it like brings me chills and such happiness to see that something so little is something that so many people don't have in their life. And he turns over to me and he's like, Mommy, I learned another line. And I was so happy. I gave him the biggest hug and the biggest kiss. I was like, I'm so proud of you. That's so great. It's definitely
it's amazing. I'm thinking about it now as you're saying, and it's amazing to see and I have this too. I mean, obviously, I wasn't raised religious, so you traveled more miles than I traveled in the journey, right? But it's an amazing thing, like the choices that you make at a young age when life is not so clear, and you're very malleable, and there's lots of things going on. You and I, we know each other well, but to see choices you make then that you really believed in, and I know you really believe in this, and you've been through a lot with it, and you wear it on your sleeve, and then to see it come out of the mouth of babes, out of your kid, out of Usher there, it's a powerful thing. Yeah, no, it's amazing. Share with us a vision of your before, by the way, Annette is now working with Israel Bonds. We got a little ticker tape down here, so you can go and check out Israel Bonds. It's good investments in pandemics. Okay, Israel's not going anywhere. Okay, you got God as your broker over there. Okay, I'm plugging Israel Bonds. In the old days when I was bar mitzvah, you plugged Israel Bonds, and now here we go. 30 years later, whatever it is, I'm plugging Israel Bonds. But Annette, just give us like one insight into Ruth, because you are the namesake. You're carrying it on. I know how connected you are. Give us one thing to chew on over here and hold with us as we go into the festival.
Yeah, so I'm learning with my Havrusa about how the Book of Ruth is the only book that we don't read about what's permissible, what isn't permissible, but rather we learn about her kindness and the redemption. And it's interesting, you don't really see that in anything else we read. So why is it that we not focus on the laws of conversion or the laws of welcoming a Jew? Like, none of that's important. All that's important is kindness. And I think it's something that is really important to keep in mind. Every morning when you daven, you say you should always treat the convert with kindness, and it's not only the convert; it's every single Jew.
Sure.
So I think it's a really beautiful thing that the Book of Ruth focuses on that rather than something else, like differences that she came from.
Yeah, beautiful. That's what we need to know is like try to inspire ourselves and how to be better and how to do more for the world and how to be good and caring. And Ruth was amazing woman, and you're amazing. And you've come into the Jewish people in such a strong and impactful way, and you helped build more Manhattan. And now you're in Israel Bonds, and you keeping managing to do more and more and more, and make all of us very, very proud and honored and privileged and humbled, and really, really proud to know you. Thank you for coming on, Annette. Great to see it. Everyone in More Manhattan is watching and waving hello. And you know how much everyone loves you. Thank you for coming. Beautiful. Okay. Amazing people, and so much to learn. And so I'd like to share with you as we wrap up tonight's show, just a little bit of preparation for tomorrow night's festival of the holiday of Shavuot. And why is it, we read the story of Ruth, and of course she was a Moabite princess, and she came into the Jewish people, and she could have had everything, the palace, go back to Moab. Naomi, her mother-in-law, Ruth's husband died, right? Naomi's son died, and she's like, it's okay. And there was another lady with her, another daughter-in-law, and she went back, and she went back to her home. She said, that's it, like, I'm out of here. There's a famine, and you got to read the story. The story is really fascinating and amazing. And your people are my people, and where you go, I will go, says Ruth. And she understood what it meant to be a pauper in the Jewish people versus being royalty in the rest of the world. And her tenacity and her choice was rewarded because she happened to go to the fields as someone who needed the benefits of others, and go into the fields. And she met Boaz the Redeemer, a distant relative of the family, and he was a widower. And he ended up taking Ruth as a wife, and they were only a wife for the husband and wife for a moment. It wasn't like, oh, let's go on a date, really like each other. It was a total spiritual union. Happens to be that before we go, I have to tell you a very funny story. I was in the South driving around. I used to play whatever. When I was at Duke University, I used to actually play organ in an AME church on gospel Sundays. I love gospel music. And I used to listen to the Southern preachers. And I remember one preacher was describing the story. Now, Ruth went in to the bedroom of Boaz, and Naomi sends her, the mother-in-law sends her, says, I want you to go in. He's the redeemer of the family, and he'll make his choice, but you have to offer yourself. Not offer yourself like that. She laid at the foot of his bed, and she uncovered his feet, because the feet are a symbol in Jewish law of continuing the progeny and continuing the family heirloom through children. That's what the feet represent. That's not for now. But this preacher was down in the South was saying, and she went in there and she slithered on up to him, and she was sexy Ruth. They're talking like, no, that's not the story. She wasn't sexy Ruth. She wasn't slithering on up. She was a totally holy woman who realized what was to come from her and from the holiness that was in her. And as she came to the Jewish people, and Boaz recognized that also. And from them come King David, And from them will come the Messiah, the house of David. The entire salvation and the kingship and the royalty and the beauty of the Jewish people comes from the woman who chose. So thank you for joining tonight. And tomorrow night, we have a custom of staying up all night and learning Torah. You can come to maormanhattan.org. You can see lots of opportunities. In fact, tonight, we have a precursor to that, starting at 9:30 until 11:30, 10-minute shots the whole time, a Shavuathon. You got to come on and you got to join us, okay, and find the whole time, grab a glass of wine, a Vitkin 2018 Pinot Noir, my recommendation for tonight, or just jump on, and there's each 10-minute bite-sized ADD type of classes, but get the juices flowing and start to love the Torah that we have. The Torah means teaching. Start to learn it, start to appreciate it, start to love it. You can come on tonight. There are a million ways to get inspiration online. We want to send you there. Follow us on maormanhattan.org. Click below, on top, below, wherever it is, and stay tuned with us, okay? And we're glad that you joined us, and we can't wait to see you next week. We're wishing everyone a Chag Sameach and a good Shabbos, and we're looking forward to next week. And we're going to let you go out with, I hope YouTube will let us, or Facebook will let us, but Sammy Davis Jr.'s When You Begin the Begin. So this will be a new beginning for us, this Chag Shavuot, a beginning of receiving the Torah and starting the year off fresh. It should be a beginning of all beginnings. Okay? Oh, we don't have the not Sammy Davis Jr.? Okay, however we're going out, we're going out. Chag Sameach. Thank you for coming. Laila Tov. Good night.